Wow, that was a bit of an introduction. So we've had quite a bit of what and how, and I thought I'd give the CIO's perspective. Bit of a confession first. Before I started doing this crazy day job, I'm actually, I suppose always will be, a software engineer. So I'm actually obsessively interested in the what and the how. But you know, as a CIO, it's not about the what and the how. It's all about the why, initially. So I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time explaining the thought process we had to go through to set out our strategy. Because if you can't make the case for this type of approach to an integrated digital care record, you're never going to get into the what and the how. And you know, it'll be hopefully useful to other CIOs. So Darriford Hospital, I'm the CIO, Director of R&T here. Still, I think, one of the largest single-site hospitals in Europe. One massive block of concrete. Doesn't win any architectural awards at all, but it is in a very, very nice place. And very functional because it's all in one place. We're pretty much typical of an acute trust, I think, talking to colleagues. So we're about 900 to 1,200 beds, depending on what you count as a bed. We've about 6,000 staff. We're a major trauma centre and we're a tertiary centre. So we're pretty normal acute trust. We've got pretty standard IT, I believe. We've had a best-of-breed interface strategy. We buy best-of-breed clinical products since '99 when I joined the trust. And we interface them together with HL7 and standards. We replaced our PAS in '99. We've got an open standard interface engine. We use InterSystems Ensemble. For those InterSystems people in the crowd, I've done your plug. I want a reduced license fee next year, please. We've got fully rolled out order comms. PACS and RIS, I'll talk about a bit later on, we've done 3 times. And we've got something unique called Salus, which is home developed. It's a patient flow solution. That becomes a bit more interesting later on when I'll talk about what we're using that for and how it'll benefit others. And Thomas said we've got 170 departmental solutions. You've underplayed the problem. We've actually got 190 departmental clinical solutions. So these are wholly independent, proprietary clinical applications by specialty. And as I say, I don't think we're unique. I think most people are nodding. That's pretty sort of normal, I think. And this is the diagram that freaks me out every time I see it. This is actually our interface architecture, and you can see at the top, July 2017. So that's pretty current. So the level of complexity to do just what we've done, and actually we've still got 190 bespoke solutions, it's incredibly complicated. So that's where we started from. We've got a few issues other than complexity. We're wholly locked in. We can't change many of those solutions because we're wholly locked in. And we find ourselves in a really strange place. I'm sure this will, some of you will actually pick up on this one, I'm sure. We buy licenses in perpetuity to make software read-only because we can't migrate the data when we buy a new one. And we do that a lot, if I'm honest. That's a big, big problem for us, proprietary vendor lock-in because of the proprietary nature of the data. Data migration nightmare, and there's no strategic fit at all, if we're really, really honest. So we're starting from a place where we know we've got to move, and where are we trying to get to? There's quite a few people here that are around sort of my age, so you'll probably remember in old money we had EPR 1 to 6. Everybody's trying to get to EPR 6. Nowadays, it's HIMSS level 7. EMR Adoption Model, we're all trying to get to 7. That's our aspiration. You know, we don't do this sequentially. We're probably around 2 at the moment. We've pretty much done PACS 3 times. We've got e-notes. We've done observations, order comms. So we're starting to do this in pieces, okay? OPENeP, I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we're starting to get towards that level 6, level 7 a bit at a time. But there's one real kicker. There's one thing that we can never nail on our current strategy, and that's level 4. Clinical decision support, proper, true clinical decision support, connecting those 190 solutions in a real way that makes absolute sense, and enterprise-wide scheduling. So that's the type of thing that if a doctor on the ward requests a specific test and it comes back and says the patient's allergic to an antibiotic, it goes off and tells pharmacy, and pharmacy prescribes another one. That's the level we're talking about, real-time decision support. Yeah? I don't know anybody worldwide that's managed to achieve that with the architecture we've got. And there's one fundamental reason that would be unbelievably complicated if we tried to do that in that architecture. It's just, even as a software engineer, I don't believe that's possible. And I've never, ever said anything's impossible as a software engineer. Everything's possible. But I don't believe we would ever get there. And the fundamental reason I believe, and this is my take on this, is that to achieve that, you've got to have a truly integrated single digital care record. You've got to have that data in a single integrated form, yeah, to achieve that level of interoperability for enterprise-wide scheduling and real-time clinical decision support. A couple of ways you can achieve it. You can buy your way into it. So you can go down the big box solutions. You can do the Epics, the Cerners, the Lorenzos, the TrackCares, you know as well as I do, the Allscripts, there's lots of them. Very, very proven. It's a very proven model. You deploy it for the level of functionality it provides you. You pretty much get benefit out of the box when you start, so it works. And you've got a consistent user interface. It's one system for the functionality it provides. And you heard earlier, it doesn't provide everything, obviously. Couple of cons, however. Boy, are you locked in. You know, Epic for one, and I'm sure the others will tell you the same, they make a big play about the fact they've never lost a customer. Well, it is a good system, but you know, if you actually take all the effort to put in something like Epic or Cerner or Lorenzo or whatever, would you really want to migrate away? So, true, but you know, you are wholly locked in, and you've got that same data migration nightmare. And, as we know, it's incredibly expensive. Most of you probably follow Gartner reports. I read a couple of weeks ago about the US actually, that they've now cited implementations of Allscripts and Cerner and Epic, I'm not singling any out here, as eye-watering, the costs, the level of costs. Now 10 years ago, they were citing these as a model of how to do it. They've suddenly realized now billions and billions of dollars are spent on regional implementations. That's probably not a surprise to anybody, but here's the thing. They're no closer now to having a truly integrated digital care record for the patient than they were 20 years ago, because none of them interoperate in the States. 21st Century Cures Act, which you're probably familiar with, is probably going to make that change over the next few years at an interoperability level. But if you're a patient and you're at the center of a region where you've got an Allscripts and you've got an Epic and you've got a Cerner, you will have 3 patient-held records. You won't have 1. And to me, that's an absolute frightmare, if I'm really honest. And that's not where we want to go. I know we're a little bit behind in terms of implementing big boxes, but I don't want to be there at all. So we wanted another approach. So we thought, okay, if we can't buy our way in, can we build our way in? So if there was an open standard framework where we could set out an aspiration of true vendor neutrality at every level of the stack, wouldn't that be something sensible to do? So that was kind of our vision. It fits with our strategic thinking. We've always had that best of breed interface on standards approach, so it kind of fit. We could do it a bit at a time. We wouldn't have to try to make this case for this huge thing and do it all at once. And a key one for me is we would start to reinvigorate that small to medium enterprise marketplace that the national program killed stone dead. You know, those of you that used to go to Harrogate like me saw the marketplace pre-national program, and if you go to the NEC and see it now, it's wholly different. And you know, the national program did that. So we want to really get that back. We want to reinvigorate the SME marketplace and really start to get this ecosystem built. Once we've done it, we've got no vendor lock-in because our data is completely abstracted. We'll have no data migration issues. We can swap pieces of functionality in and out, and everything will just carry on working as it did before. And incremental investment is both less, and you don't have to make these massive investment cases to NHSI. You know, try taking an £80 million investment case to the NHSI. Good luck with that one. It's not something I particularly would like to do. So it does give us the ability to incrementally invest year on year, business cases year by year, to do pieces of the puzzle. So we ruled that one out, and we set our strategy on an open standard approach. Now this is interesting. How do you do one bleeper and two screens? So bottom right in that diagram, the bottom layer is the data layer. The bottom right actually says PACS, hopefully. We've changed PACS 3 times in the time I've been at the hospital. We had AGFA, pre-national programme. The national programme came along and asked us politely to change it, so we changed it to GE. And then the national programme kind of came to an abrupt stop, as did the contract, so we had to do something else, and we've now got Insignia. So we've had 3 completely separate pieces of software for clinicians to use. And you know what? Wholly seamless. We trained clinicians on a new product, and they just carried on as they did the day before, simply because it's got a data standard. DICOM's been there like forever, as far as I can remember. So because the data was held in a data vendor neutral format, we could simply swap out one solution with another solution, train our users, and they just carried on as they did before. And that was kind of the light bulb moment for me. That was the, wow, what if we could do that on the left-hand end of that bottom stack, which is the 190 solutions. If we could get to a point that each one of those had unique functionality, fine, but had a non-proprietary open data model, we could then compete supplier against supplier, swap software out, and not have any lock-in at all. So that was my kind of light bulb moment. All sat under our nice open architecture. For us, it's Ensemble, but it could be anything you like, really, as long as it's open standard-based. We've had standards there for years. We've had HL7. We've had ITK, remember that? We've had IHE. Now we've got FHIR. And FHIR isn't a competitor for OpenEHR, if you want my 10 penneth. I know there's a lot going on about this. They're totally and utterly complementary to each other. Discuss. Then we've got an application stack across the top, all delivered through Salus, which I showed you earlier. That's our view. We want it all delivered through a common portal to any device. So that's kind of our aspiration, okay? Then we had a bit of good luck. We actually went out to procure an electronic prescribing solution. We went out to OJU. We got right through the end of it, and we actually didn't shortlist anybody because we didn't find anybody actually that was capable of meeting the full requirement. That's not the good luck. The good luck is CGI, who we were working with at the time, actually introduced us to Mirand, and they shown us their OpenEP product. And they shown us their view of the world, I guess, their vision for how this should all hang together. And they're really alike. And honestly, we did not rob either. Oh, where's Thomas? We certainly, I've said to Thomas before, we certainly didn't rob theirs, that's for sure. These were created totally in isolation. But you can see complete similarity. And when we actually met with these guys, we looked at the product, we looked at their philosophy and the OpenEHR platform ThinkAir that they developed, and their ethos around open standards. There was a unique fit there for us. So we then said, okay, we'll take OpenEP as the first application on that application stack, based around an interoperable framework with the OpenEHR platform as the vendor-neutral data layer. That will be our first-line strategy. Where we are now, we started that January, April? Oh, it seems a long time ago now. So we've been doing this, yeah, you're nodding, around about April time, yeah. We're first of type for OpenEP in the UK. It's open source, held in the Aperta Foundation, not-for-profit organisation, which is fundamentally us. So we own the source. All set up nicely for us by NHS Digital. Thank you very much, Peter. And it's based on the ThinkAir platform on an OpenEHR repository, and it's going to be delivered through Salus. Absolutely happy days. We go live in June next year. We have the test environment in place at the moment, and it's looking really, really good, I've got to say. So all things are starting to really start to pull together with it. As I say, the Aperta Foundation is the means by which we're going to hang all the source together, certainly for OPENeP to start with, but other things to come, which I'll just talk about in a second. And here's a key thing for me. I'm not standing here saying we're trying to do away with commerciality. I think a lot of people see this as what's in it for the software supplier, what's in it for the commercial partner. And I get asked it a lot, I've got to be honest. And what I try to say is we need relationships with software innovators. We just need a different type of relationship. What I don't want is licensed software that's licensed by site, by named user or concurrent user, specific to me for X amount of money. What I want is something a little bit more fluid, something that we can create an innovation partnership around. For argument's sake, and this is just throwing it out there, why wouldn't we license on patient rather than named users, sites, services, and concurrency? So that, for me, instead of having my remit stop at the end of that concrete block, my remit now will have to go into the whole of Devon because we've got to interoperate across the whole of Devon. I want to deploy software out of the hospital, into the community, into primary care, into other acute trusts. It's all the same patients. Why should we pay again? We need a slightly different model. Because when we've looked at our existing framework, even if that software was capable of doing the whole community piece, you know what? We couldn't afford to deploy it based on our current license model. And that's just madness. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done to work with our commercial partners to actually set that up. Very, very early days, we don't have all the answers, but the software, certainly SMEs and some of the bigger players we're working with, very, very interested in having that discussion with us because they see the future. And the future isn't sell us a license based on X number. That's not the future. So this is Salus, just to give you a quick flavor of what we've actually done. This is the piece we've written, and you can see, we probably can't actually, it's not particularly clear. There's the little tab at the top that says meds, which was unique to this project. When they click on meds, in context, this piece down the bottom is actually OPENeP, the Moran product. And my developers and the Moran guys have been working joined at the hip, and they've actually seamlessly integrated these two. We're not talking interfacing now, we're talking absolutely bolted these things together at the, I guess, the doing level rather than the interface level. We're not passing messages, I think is what I'm saying. So there's no joins whatsoever with this. It all appears to the user like it's Salus, which is great for me because I get all the credit. But behind the scenes, Moran have put in the OPENeP clinicality, that really safe clinical product. So where from here? If you remember the application stack, we've done one, we've done OPENeP. We want to do more now, all based on that same stack. We just want to roll applications out as quick as we can get our hands on them. We want order communications, we want electronic OBS, anything you like. Whether it comes from Moran, whether it comes from an open source community, whether it comes from other trusts that are involved in this game now, we want as much as we can get, and we want to deploy it as soon as we can to start to build this whole ecosystem up. We're looking to make Salus, which is the product we've brought to the table, open source through the Aperta Foundation and NHS Digital, so that for argument's sake, our implementer is CGI. It could be one of a number, but we're using CGI. We want them to be able to come to another trust and for a fixed price, deploy OPENeP. And if the trust haven't got a portal, they can deploy Salus as well. And they can have all the benefits of bed management and patient flow and all that kind of stuff. It should be as simple as that. There's a fixed price model for a commercial support partner to just come along and say, you want that one, you want this one. If they've got an existing portal, deploy OPENeP and integrate it with that portal. That's where we're trying to get that framework set up. And lastly, but for me probably the most important, we're all pioneers at the moment. You saw the nice diagram earlier, I wish I had that. We're very much at the forefront of this. A lot of people don't even understand this at the moment. And one of the things we've got to do, and I think one of our biggest challenges, is how we get out there and we both evangelize it and we build this ecosystem, this thing that's going to take it from quite niche, which is where it is at the moment, to actually being fully mainstream such that it can challenge the Epics, the Lorenzos, the TrackCares and everything else. And for me, that involves a whole blended approach, really. We need to invest locally in our own development teams and make them work differently, because they're not going to be writing everything. We need to certainly invigorate local SMEs, and we need to be connecting with bigger partners. For us, people like education. When I was a kid in Plymouth, the school gates used to open in June, and the dockyard gates used to open, and kids used to flock out from school straight into the dockyard. Now, what we want to do is do that with education. We want people, graduates, coming out of university in Plymouth and spending 18 months to 2 years working with us, developing apps, building this ecosystem, giving themselves a CV. In 2 years, they're going to go off to industry, and they're going to come up and work in London and make a fortune. But for that 18 months to 2 years, we want to get that vibrancy locally with those very skilled people that can write these apps for a pastime if you put a little bit of rigor around them, a little bit of structure. And national global developments, things like this, working with other trusts. We've got Salus, you can have it for free. You've got a business analyst tool, we can have it for free. Moscow have written this fantastic thing. They'll charge us, I'm sure, but we'll come up with some deal. That kind of arrangement. And the reason we can do it is because it's all based on one open data record. Thank you.
Andy, just as good as last time. Thank you. We are a little bit over, but not too bad. Thanks to all our speakers for keeping well to time, and you know, it was a packed program. Any questions before we break for lunch?
Phew.
Hungry people.
Somebody had to have the slot before lunch, and it was me.
Yeah, we'll all be available to chat. Please go and enjoy lunch, and we're due to be back here. Sorry?